Cool. Yeah, let's dive in. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you
Nice.
so much for taking a minute out today.
Oh, you're kidding? Thanks for reaching out. This is
Yeah,
just fun. This is fun.
absolutely.
I'm somewhat new on Podmatch, so
Okay.
I'm having a great time
Yeah,
talking
it
to
is.
you. So,
Yeah, podcasting is a wonderful community. It's great. It really is.
yeah.
Um, so before we get into your work, I want to know first and foremost, 5 years ago, this pandemic really changed so much, so many things and changed us. How
Yeah.
did you get through that time period and how is it reverberated into 2025 for you?
It was interesting timing for me. I had a what I call my health adventure that I finally got through in 2028 or 2018, sorry.
Yeah.
And so then, I'm just kind of getting the rhythm back up and COVID hits. And I was working for an international company. So we were on the front edge with our China offices saying, hey, can you send us masks? We're out. We don't have anything and kind of rolling with that. I've worked from home for years, so it wasn't a big issue to just transition. And most of my clients, I was a marketing manager, were international, so that was normal. But honestly, the best part was I had a couple of friends, and we did a Friday night thing. Um, they had been sort of isolated due to a number of reasons, and it was like, okay, we made a pact that we were just going to get together every Friday. And it was like, okay, what do you have in your fridge? What do you have in your fridge? Whose house are we going to? Let's get together. We'd play games, we'd play cards, whatever, and just spend time and laugh and kind of process the whole thing. And then it was walking around the neighborhood waving at neighbors from across the street. And kind of nice to have some time to really reflect. I think it was a big part of my making the next transition a couple of years later of really what's valuable and what am I supposed to be doing on this in this life.
Yeah.
What am I really here for? A lot of clarity came.
So let's get to what you're doing right now and maybe even incarnations of what you did before. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's career day. Kids always try to get the truth out of you.
Yes.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, at this career day, one of the kids says, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer him?
I would start by reminding them or letting them know that every single human being has within them their own personal guidance system. And that's what we call our intuition. But it works like the GPS in our car. It's there to guide us, to keep us safe. It helps us going in the right direction, as opposed to, our rational mind. Our rational mind's always trying to keep things on track. It's like keeps the trains running. But that inner guidance system is one that moves us forward, moves us in a positive way, moves us to what we need to be doing. And that's what I do. I help people connect with that. We all have it, but not everybody listens to it, unfortunately. They don't utilize this amazing tool that's innate in all of us. And that's something that I help people do is learn how to recognize it, how it shows up, like those gut feelings that something feels great or something just doesn't feel right. That's the most obvious way. And then from that, learning how to move into whatever that is that's next, the next step. So that's essentially what I do.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. When you were 12 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream job?
Oh man, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I loved writing. I loved reading books about travel, and I that's probably my number one passion is traveling.
Yeah.
And so I loved reading books like that, but I wasn't one of those kids that just always knew. My brother did. Oh my gosh. He's been on an escalator his whole life. He always knew what he wanted. He was hanging out at the airport when he was 7, learned to fly. My life has been kind of more like, the Space Mountain at Disneyland,
Yeah. Yeah.
the roller coaster, much more, ups and downs and loops and loop-de-loops and everything else. But it's been part of my learning lesson. That's been my path. And I'm grateful for it, actually.
So take me back to the beginnings of your life. Where were you born and raised, and what were the foundational elements that cemented your personality and has allowed you to evolve into where you found your place?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was born in Cleveland.
Okay.
Lived there, so very Midwestern values.
Yeah.
My dad was, big advocate of, working hard, keeping your focus, doing whatever you need to do. Amazing customer service man. And I'm so grateful because I did get that. I've learned that, anything that we're doing in life, if you're taking care of your paying attention to the other person and what they need and helping them, things just it's like it's not a magic element, but it really makes a huge difference. It makes life easier. So I learned those basic Midwestern, fundamentals and foundations. And we moved to California when I was about 9, and then grew up in Southern California, a whole different kind of modality. But
Yeah.
yeah, very Midwestern still, that mindset of, taking care of people, caring about people, being, I'm more outgoing. Certain cities, when I lived in San Francisco, very busy, probably the same in New York, something like that. Everybody was in their own little box. There wasn't the interaction.
Yeah.
So much more casual here in California. So
Yeah.
I like it.
So let me ask you this. You talked about kind of being in the Space Mountain roller coaster ups and downs. When you
Yeah.
look at your career, what's the biggest risk that you've had to take?
Well, the biggest risk that I took, and this came after a major transition, my intuition guiding me out of state to a major shift. I moved up to Washington State and from California, and decided I was going to start an import business. Went on my first buying trip to India. I had been there. I knew that was where I wanted to be. And I was scheduled to fly home on September 12th and couldn't. It was a week before I was able to get home. And I was just starting, just starting. I mean, that was the first buying trip. I didn't even have the business up and running. And I stayed with it. I kept that business going for 8 years.
Yeah.
It took a lot. It took a lot financially from me. I probably should have stopped sooner. If I'd listened to my intuition, it would have been just, it's time, let it go. But I was, it's like, no, I'm going to make this work.
Yeah.
Stuck in a little bit too long. So that was a little bit of a risk.
Yeah.
But because I saw the market just continuing to shrink. But oh my gosh, did I learn? I mean, it was like taking a master's class in business, just building it and getting it going. Because I had no idea how to start an import business. So I learned everything. But I also was amazed every day that things would come up and they'd go, oh, I need to do this now. And I go, oh, yeah. And I knew how to do it. And I'm like, how do you know how to do that? Well, that roller coaster, some of those ups and downs, those little jobs that I had in between the big significant ones
Yeah.
gave the tools. So the tools were there. My toolbox was full with everything that I needed
Yeah.
to do that, which was just like, I loved it. It was amazing. It was fun.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Who's been that hero, that inspirational force for you to find your way in life?
Well, core foundations from my dad, I have to say that. But I started early on in my life with spiritual studies, studying world religions, exploring. Emerson and Thoreau have been major influences. Ernest Holmes. I really started to learn that I had the agency to make changes in my life. Oh my gosh, when I was a kid, I was scared to death to make a decision for fear I'd make the wrong one. What if I made a decision, oh, I then that I'm stuck on that path. I didn't
Yeah.
realize I could no, you take another path, you just take another direction. So it was a huge uh, step forward for me to realize at any moment I can shift and I can change, I can pivot, try something different, go a completely different direction, which has sort of been the theme of my life, honestly.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so if you could meet one really good business mind or a coach, anybody in the world right now, one person that might help you on your path that you find fascinating, who would that be?
Wow. Oh, there's so many. Well, my first one is the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Number one. I'm like a groupie of the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
I've heard him speak live. Just the clarity and the centeredness that he has, the
Hmm.
strength and conviction. I love business people. Oh, wow. there's so many. I mean, there's so many aspects of Bill Gates that I don't necessarily want to follow, but I admire him so much in so many ways for really having the vision and staying with it and, starting from the ground floor. It's admirable.
Yeah.
That's really admirable.
I just listened to a book with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. They had conversations.
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah, it was really, really good.
Yeah.
With the way the world is and how frightening it got so fast, it's like I'm trying to find books that have levels of positivity. Like the first thing I read in January was a biography on Fred Rogers and how he was the same guy on TV as he was in real life. That was him all the time. And it was a really cool look into his world.
Isn't that it? It's finding that authenticity.
Yeah.
That was part of my lesson. Be the same at work
Uh-huh.
as you are at home. And now, when I first started in the workforce, it was, women weren't supposed to be managers. It was moving up into a managerial position was like a big thing
Yeah.
as a woman. And it was like, oh, okay, I had to do the little man suits and kind of, the folk. That's like, no,
Yeah.
no, no. It's like, no, here's who I am. And I'm going to
Mhm.
express myself. My focus is going to be customer service. That's how I was an amazing salesperson and did so well in sales, even though it wasn't my passion,
Yeah.
but because it was all service. And I implemented that in everything. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
just here are the people that you're there to serve,
Yeah. For
you know.
sure. So let me ask you this. One of the big things that helps us grow and adapt to this reality is travel. And you mentioned traveling a lot. What's one of the most magically unexpected places you went to that you just didn't think you were going to love it as much as you did, but you did?
That's interesting. I loved Greece. I had so many like, oh, I've lived here before. I mean, so many deep
Yeah.
experiences. Same thing in Russia back when it was the Soviet Union. I went as a citizen diplomat, and when Gorbachev was changing things for the better, I'm not interested in going.
Yeah.
But what really surprised me is I did a trade show with my job in Dubai.
Okay.
And I didn't think I would like it. I mean, I know I don't like the heat, but it was a fascinating city.
Yeah.
There was so much about it that I really liked. I loved architecture. I love that. And every building in the city has to be different. There's no duplicates. I love the uniqueness of what they've created. Those islands out in the
Yeah.
middle of the bay, and I couldn't live there. You can't drive more than 5 miles over the speed limit, which is not my best thing,
Yeah. Uh,
without getting massive tickets. And it's more than a little bit of a police state. I have stories that would, are really funny about that. But I really liked it so much more than I expected. So that was a surprise. Not a place for me to go live, but I'd like to go back and visit again.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. How have you historically with work-life balance, how have you done that? How do you protect and take care of your soul and then give yourself to help your clients get to a better place? What is that motivator every day for you to do both of those at the best ability that you have?
Yeah, it's a balance. Yeah, and it's not always easy. Meditation's a core for me. Meditation, getting out in nature. My internet looks a little fuzzy here, but we'll keep going.
Okay.
But meditation, finding quiet time, just even if it's not, it doesn't have to be 45 minutes and sitting in lotus and oming. I even tell my clients if you can't find any time, sit in your car for 5 minutes before you go into the house.
Yeah,
You've got to find ways to create that time to start listening and to listen to yourself and listen to your spirit speaking. That's been critical for me. That and nature is always so important for me. Just getting out, walking down a path, taking 5 minutes, and hiking. Just there's something magical about nature.
I agree.
Something magical about that. Those are two keys for me.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and ran into the
Yeah.
18-year-old version of you, ready to charge into the world, and you could give that young version a piece of advice, what would you tell your younger version?
Oh, relax. Stop worrying about everybody else. Stop worrying about what you're supposed to do and where you're going to go. And I was so anxious at that point, and even at that point, I was like, oh, that was, what if I go here? Fear of making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
There is no wrong decision. There is no wrong decision. It's a choice. Everything's a choice.
Hmm.
And if we're listening to our intuition, if we're paying attention to that inner guidance, in my personal experience, it has never been wrong. It has
Yeah.
never been anything other than maybe neutral.
Yeah.
And it's when we don't listen to it that we find out why we should listen
Yeah.
to it. I have a couple stories on that if you want, but
Yeah.
um, just yeah, don't take everything so seriously.
Yeah.
Don't Everything is not so critical. You're going to find your way. Just take a breath, relax, stop worrying about it, and just have
Absolutely.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
speaking of fun, let's say you walk into a room of everybody that's worked with you, that's known you in a professional sense, clients you've had, and you could walk to a podium in that room and give everybody one fun story. Maybe the best jazz show you ever saw, jumping out of an airplane, a fun adventure, something just that would humanize you a little bit more to that room.
Well, I would never jump out of an airplane unless it
Okay.
was on fire, number
Right.
one. That is not on the list.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Um, well, most of my fun stories come from traveling.
Yeah.
Adventures doing that, wandering around the Soviet Union at night by myself, going to a jazz club in Moscow. Fantastic
What
experience.
was that like? I mean, even in the old days, I mean, that level of music was probably still not quite embraced.
They were fanatics about jazz. That was
Okay.
so interesting to find out. And this was like 89, I think,
Okay.
that we were there, and we were, meeting with different peace groups and whatnot. It was a mission for that. And we got to go to the Bolshoi and whatnot. But one of the options was to go to a jazz club. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Let's go. They love jazz. So it was kind of funky down in a basement someplace.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. And they were great musicians,
Yeah.
really wonderful. So, it was such a nice connector on a human level. It's like, yeah, yeah, we've got that in common because I used
Yeah.
to hang out at jazz clubs a lot when
That's
I was
cool.
younger. So, yeah, it was amazing. And, with the travel, if there's anything that's connected, that it is that we are really all the same. We dress differently, we speak differently. One time when I was in India, I was, if I can share
Oh yeah.
another little story, stuck in traffic in New Delhi, 15 million people or whatever, rush hour, and, nobody's moving, and cows in the road, so
Yeah.
such a fantastic place. And looking over on the side of the road, on the corner of the road, just street corner in the middle of the city, there was a cot, and the man's just laid down on the cot, and a little stool right at the corner of the street is his wife. She's holding a toddler baby, probably a year old, on her lap. She's over a kerosene flame. She's cooking dinner. 5 o'clock, husband's home from work, wife's cooking dinner, taking care of the kids. It could be Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
It could be anywhere in the world. This is what we do.
Yeah.
We're just taking care of our family, trying to feed our kids, trying to create a nice life. And I've seen that over and over and over. That's who we are as
Yeah.
people. That's the common thread.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that. It just warms me.
Yeah. I have a good friend of mine that's in IT, and he went to New Delhi around the beginning of the year, and he was like, the one thing you can't do is look the monkeys in the eye.
Oh, they're smarter than us. I will tell
Right.
you. I had a granola bar with me because I'd been, I think, where was I? I was at the Red Fort or something. I had extra time to tour when I couldn't fly home, so I got to see, the Taj Mahal, and I was at the Red Fort, and I was starving. I hadn't eaten, but I brought granola bars, and I opened one up, and I'm running, and there's monkeys all around, and I'm like, no way, monkeys, and I throw it behind my back, and one of them, they tag teamed me.
Oh, of course.
And this one zipped around this way, grabbed it out of my hands, ran over there, and they're all laughing. I mean, you
Yeah.
could see them. He's going, we
Yeah.
got it. So silly, so fun. But
And the other thing that was amazing that he told me, and it puts everything into relevancy because in America we tend to be dire about things. He was telling me the air quality in New Delhi was really bad.
It's gotten better.
Okay.
I can't remember the year, but they changed from, I mean, basically this diesel kerosene fuel that the tuk-tuks, the auto rickshaws would use. They changed to a clean energy.
Okay.
And what I understand, I know it was 6 months later after they had done that, it was palpable.
Wow. Okay.
Just in the 6 months between one trip and another through
Okay.
Delhi, the difference in seeing
Yeah.
the what it had looked like kind of a dense fog,
Yeah.
but it just made a huge difference. The tuk-tuk drivers weren't terribly happy because they were waiting in line for 2 hours to get
Yeah.
this, new fuel, but the difference in the air. So they've made progress.
Yeah. That's good. That's
They've
good.
made progress.
So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done in your life, and more importantly, evolved to, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Oh, I think my resilience,
Yeah.
my just knowing that I can get through anything, that I can get through anything. Whatever curveball shows up, life stuff happens.
Yeah.
The good stuff's easy, that's fun, although it takes some maneuvering too. But any of the challenges that I've been able to just face it straight, straight on and go, okay, this is what I have to deal with next.
Yeah.
How we're going to do this. Let's figure this out. And this is an experience. Let's move on. And yeah, I had a series of two or three of those like in a row within a few years, and it tested my mettle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tested my mettle.
So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, we kind of touched on this, but this is a little bit more pointed. But ultimately, you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. Well, I know for sure I'm an explorer. I'm a seeker, spiritual seeker. Uh, That's part of the travel. I want to see how other people live. I want to see how the rest of the world functions and does things. And I if I lived in the 1800s, I would have been one of the first ones on a covered wagon. I
Yeah.
promise you that. I've moved city to city. Even exploring neighborhoods. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and I love biographies. I love biographies. How did they live? How did they manage to do what they do? And
Yeah.
I think that's probably the core, a foundation of me is that I have friends that say you're kind and you're good at this and you're good at that, and I love that. Thank you. That's very nice. But I think at heart, that's I'm an explorer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, ooh, that's going to keep me up at night. Wow. I should have an answer for that, shouldn't I?
Oh, no, not necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
we get a lot of stuff in this life.
Yeah. I, boy, probably learned. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, I was probably about 12 or 13, is how to laugh at myself.
Yeah.
I didn't do that for those first years. Everything I took personally, everything, I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And learning that was a really key lesson.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much advice, but it was a situation that I was in, a circumstance that I was in. And I learned to do that. And that made a huge, that was a huge point. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
if anyone has any questions, they're curious, they want to reach out, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
My company is Journey to Purpose.
Okay.
I focus on midlife and beyond because it's never too late. Dreams have no deadline.
Yeah.
They can reach me at journeytopurpose.org. Go to the contact page. If they have stories that they want to share, I'm gathering them for a book. I would love to give your listeners a tracking sheet. They can request that so that when their intuition speaks to them, if they're not used to listening to it, it helps to just track what happened, How did it come through, the gut feeling? Was it this absolute clear knowing? The more you start learning to recognize that voice, like I would recognize your voice next time I hear it,
Yeah.
the easier it becomes to listen to it and pay attention. So I want to offer them that. And I would love to talk to anyone, just 15, 20 minutes. I'd love to talk to them and maybe help them jumpstart. Because, sometimes it just takes one conversation
Hmm.
to kind of shift your trajectory,
Yeah.
kind of move you on a path. So, yeah, journeytopurpose.org
Yeah.
is my website. And yeah, I do one-on-one coaching and love to help guide anyone from
Absolutely.
where they are to what they're here to do. Every one of us has a unique purpose.
Yeah.
Took me a while to find mine,
Yeah.
but this is it.
Sometimes it
It's
takes a little while. Yeah.
yeah. So my brother knew when he was 7,
Yeah.
exactly what he wanted, but that's rare. I think that's unusual.
Oh, yeah.
So
It certainly is. So I will
yeah,
put all this in the show notes. Anna, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
love the conversation. Thanks,
Yeah,
Joe.
it's
This has
wonderful.
been fun and thought provoking.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. It's good to kind of be reflective, and you were wonderful. So thank you so much. Best of luck with everything.
My pleasure. Thank you. You too.
I
Looking to
appreciate
get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.